My favorite film, I think because of my familiarity with it, is the Powell Pressburger Tales of Hoffman. The sequence, I think, that best describes what this film is like is the very opening sequence, which starts with a lit window, and there's a man making love to a woman just in silhouette, and the light goes out. The camera comes down over the rooftops, and we come down to, eventually, to a theater. And this character, Lindorf, walks in. This is my man, Dracula. And he's Hoffman's nemesis throughout the film. Lindorf makes this magnificent entrance. You go to this overhead shot, which is one of the most beautiful, stark shots I've ever seen. A great red carpet and just 3 straight back chairs. And he goes sweeping around through the chairs, and his cape has a tassel on the end of it. And as he goes through doors, it sort of gets caught, and just goes through, and it oils its way behind him like a snake or something. And he goes into the theater and he watches Moira Shearer doing the Dragonfly ballet. I was 11 or 12, maybe, something like that. And there used to be a television show called $1 Million Movie that showed films twice a day, the same film all week. And I just watched it and watched it and watched it every time that I could, and just fell in love with it. And initially, was drawn to the fantastic elements in it. I like it because it's a little more abstract. It's silent filmmaking, basically, because the soundtrack was all just playback. There was no dialogue, so they were very free to shoot it with very liberating techniques and make some wonderful shots. And I think it's one of those rare things where you can actually get an audience involved in this film, even an audience that isn't interested in opera or doesn't even like the sound of opera. And the outfits and the costumes are just so, very fantastic. I mean, it's like looking at the cover of a sci-fi fantasy magazine or something. So it has all these classical influences. It also has a kind of a strange, futuristic, otherworldly feel. The sets were just so beautiful. They almost looked like Spielberg films or Disney films, but yet the mixture of gauzes and color and Miro influences and sculptures and things that are, wacky and a little bit off kilter. I just fell in love with this film, and I fell in love with this character, Lindorf, who was the greatest Dracula ever. And, I think that the dark parts of the film are maybe what helped push me into a real affection for the genre that I've been working in for so long. Yes, I go back to it often. I mean, I've shown it to my kids, hoping that they'll sort of get the same hit from it. My daughter is studying ballet, so she loves the ballet sequences. She's not as... she doesn't like my movies, and she's not into the dark side yet. So she's not, I don't think, really devouring this. But my son is completely into it. But he's a Godzilla fan, so he would like this movie.
The scene that I remember probably more than any other, and it is a sort of fairly full canvas the one's talking about here, is the scene from Sajid Ray's Pather Panchali. And there's a wonderful moment about halfway when the 2 children wander off and they encounter basically the 20th century. And a train goes by, a steam train. And you hear it, first of all, and his sister sort of looks up, and then he looks, and then you see this extraordinary iron monster with steam belching out, and it just goes past the scene. And it's odd because the two children are content in the world that they exist in. We, the audience, know that there is another world out there which is, in a sense, threatening in a totally different way to the elements and disease and the various other things they have to cope with, but is threatening in a different way. The children aren't aware of it. There's no sense that they are longing to escape from the world that they're in.
Come on.
I was obsessed by India at a young age. I'd read masters who wrote a lot, who wrote Buana Junction, and I'd seen the films. I'd seen Renoir's The River. That was another Westerner's view of India. So this was the first time that I actually had been literally on the inside of what it really was like to live in India. But there was also, but I suppose because I'd been brought up in the country, had great resonances for me. And whilst I was not brought up in the kind of poverty that obviously one witnessed in this film, you always wanted to escape. That's why I found the children really interesting. They didn't seem to want to escape. I really wanted to escape. So I would be walking in the fields and I'd see a train. And I always wanted to be on the train going somewhere else. I mean, I've always been obsessed by trains. And I have a friend who has a house in Suffolk, and he's got about 10 acres, and there's the railway lines at the end of it. And I never go to his house without going on my own down there, and I sit in this field on my own, and I wait for a train to go by, because it always reminds me of this one scene. I mean, it is a moment of complete innocence. You're seeing this little boy with all of these various influences being brought to bear upon him, his introduction to the 20th century, to the train, another world where more sophisticated people lived, and so on, and also where he was eventually going to end up. And you know that this wide eyes sucking all of this in like a sponge it's all going to come out somewhere. So in a sense, it always had the resonance for me that I had in my own childhood, which was sort of wandering the fields. I was an only child. He seemed rather lucky to me to have a sister whom he could relate to. I was often alone, wandering in the fields and seeing these events.
Push. Come on. কোথায় এলাম রে? ওগুলো কি রে? মা যদি
The next movie close-up is tonight at 5 to 10 here on BBC Two.